Hello, welcome to Forest Focus. And Ange Postecoglou became the first Nottingham Forest manager since the 1800s to fail to win any of his opening 5 games in charge. Is this all doomed to failure after the defeat to Sunderland, or should we look at the slow starts for Andoni Iraola and Oliver Glasner, who we all wanted, and even Brian Clough as Forest lessons in patience? Joining me to discuss all that and more is first of all Pete Blackburn. Pete, morning. How are you?
Morning. Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Looking forward to a bit of catharsis with a chat through it with you guys, hopefully.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Should be good. Michael Temple, how are you doing?
Feeling good, actually. Still a bit high on life after Notts winning the championship, and it was great to be looked after by Forest at the weekend as the boys did that lap of honour. But yeah, cricket season is over, football season continues, so a few months to get stuck into it.
You didn't do a John Terry and don full pitch and join them on the lap then?
Kept it classy, actually. We were fortunate enough to be invited into the boardroom, and Gary's friend John McGovern and a few others looked after us. Nick Randall's a big cricket fan, so yeah, the hospitality from Forest towards all of our players was excellent. But I resisted the temptation to join the lap of honour because last time I did that with the 100 trophy, someone just told me I looked like Sam Surridge's dad, and yeah, I didn't want to give any more ammo to the Twitter sphere.
Very wise. Reds legend Garry Birtles, morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Yes, very good, thank you.
Good to have you with us. Looking to hearing your thoughts on the game and all things Forest and how it is at the moment. Temps, you were there. Kick us off on the game itself. What did you make of it? And then we'll branch out from there.
Well, look, we didn't finish our chances, did we? And having watched Chris Wood in the manner that I have for the last season and a half, to see him miss that header inside the 6-yard box was heartbreaking, because when he's on form and Forest are firing, he converts that chance, and the feeling at full time is somewhat different to how it was. Amari Hutchinson had that big chance. Igor Jesus directly after. There were ways for Forest to get back into that game, and for long periods we did dominate possession and territory. But that spark, that X factor, that bit of magic, and frankly that luck that we had at stages last season wasn't there. And as things stand at the minute, I can't help but feel for Ange, who has tried to enact change really quickly, has left us a little bit more defensively lapsed, but he's taking positive risk and trying to find ways to score goals. Unfortunately, after 5 games, it hasn't come off yet, and we see ourselves where we are. We see that run of results. We heard the boos at full time, and things don't feel as good as they might. What's required is a win. We want to see Ange playing winning football, irrespective of the tweaks, the changes he needs to make to personnel, to tactics and formation. And that hasn't quite happened yet. So I'm seeing players who are a little bit out of sorts. I'm also seeing people like Elliot Anderson who are completely fulfilled and at home and able to flourish in a system like this. But it's a results business. Our results have been poor, and that tide needs to turn quickly. Not just so Ange can communicate to the players that things are working, he can be trusted, the formations, the style of play is going to work, but also to build that sentiment and to get everybody on board, because already I see division in the fan base between those with a positive and negative outlook as to where we find ourselves, and that can only be addressed on the field through scraping 3 points from somewhere. It needs to come quickly. I really want this narrative to end of the winless streak under new management. It isn't helping anyone, but wins will come, and the pace in which they arrive and the manner of their succession is what's going to define this reign, because it got off to a particularly tricky start.
We'll get into obviously Ange and all the fan perception, but on the game itself, Pete, I think you and Temps are higher on the performance than I am. I saw less in this performance than I did against even Swansea, Burnley, and certainly Betis, obviously. And I'll ask Garry about the tactical plan and everything. But do you think I'm too down on the performance? Obviously, we're all down on the result. Did you see more in it like Temps then?
Yeah, I mean, if I was on Twitter now, I'd just be inserting a sort of hallelujah gif in response to Temps's first answer there, because I couldn't really disagree with anything that he said. Look, I don't think you're wrong to be more down on this performance than those other ones, to be honest. I thought we were probably less fluid. But I think there's probably context to that, in that we were playing against a team with a proper low block, brilliantly compact, organised, defensively solid, And, you know, we saw last year, we did that to plenty of teams, didn't we? And made them look stunted and that they were struggling to create things. So I think there's more to it than just that. I mean, so yeah, I wouldn't say you're wrong to be slightly more down on it. Like you say, I think your description is perfectly apt. I think that at the moment, frustration is just the word of the moment for me. I'm frustrated that we didn't get, on balance, what I thought we should have done from that game. And it's pretty simply, as Tebs has diagnosed, down to, well, it's two things. It's not taking the chances, and then it's having an absolute messy moment and a total head loss from one set piece. But, you know, you have a little delve into the stats and you go over the chances and you watch that game back. You take away that insane defending, and it just looks like it should be a comfortable, not swashbuckling, and definitely gritty, but a sort of comfortable single goal win. But the wider context is frustrating as well, and that's the problem we've got now, is that it's not just about every single game, is it? It's about the sort of growing sense of a wider narrative, you know. And I sort of get it in some senses, but I don't in others. It's incredibly frustrating, and if I think I haven't seen a home win since March, Brighton, I think, and that's not because I haven't been at any games. I mean, I've picked badly and I've been on holiday and stuff, but you know, that's a long time, and people will be in similar circumstances to that. Obviously, some will have been at other games where we did get a result, but it does say a lot about where we're at, and it's been a difficult period of time. Even though last season was brilliant overall, clearly it was difficult towards the end. And in the wider context, it's this, we're going through enormous change right now, and we're doing that without having had the preseason to do it, which is, you know, the first thing that you need, really, with an awful lot of change around the football club, a new manager, and then this growing sort of cloud of negativity that I think is threatening to become really, really toxic. You know, this manager needs support to make big changes, and he needs patience, but it's becoming difficult because we've not had the results. But I just think if you go over every single one of those games, it could be so different with just really, really small moments. I do genuinely think that Betis is a great performance in, you know, for the most part, and should have been remembered really, really fondly. I think for Burnley, we were good for half a game. Not good enough, I get that, but I think we could have come out with a win and probably deserved it on the general balance of things. And I thought we were a better side than Sunderland. We absolutely messed the bed in the end, and that's what you get. But if you look at all those things, it feels like it could be so different. So frustrating is the word for me.
What do you make of the game, Gary? Especially from a former player's point of view.
Right.
You've been in dugouts as well. A lot of chances missed, or is it more the manager?
Let's get down to the basics first. Sod all the rest of the stuff. You've got to be brutally honest sometimes. And I think I'm entitled as an ex-player playing at the highest level to say these things. I'm not saying it to be ultra negative. I'm just saying as I see it, and how things were done when we played as well. We went deep in tournaments. We went, European Cups, League Cups, FA Cups, whatever. Not so many FA Cups. And in the league, we played more games, and you took one game at a time. And that analogy still should exist today. I thought on Saturday, when I saw that team sheet, I thought we're showing Sunderland a little bit of disrespect here. We're saving people for the European game this Thursday. You play your best team every game. You don't leave your best players on the bench. I'm sorry. I was really annoyed when I saw that. And I'm sure, the owner might have been as well. You don't leave Gibbs White on the bench. You don't leave a guy who just scored 4 goals on the bench. You've got to play your best team. If it was deep into February and we're going deep in competitions, I could understand, saving people. But it's September. They've played 5 games. Play your best players. We didn't do that. Sunderland started better than us. And, they didn't look out of place in the Premier League. We've played 2 of the promoted teams now and got 1 point out of the 2 games. And, I look back at Tottenham when they won the Europa League. They finished, 4th from bottom in the league? Was it 4th from bottom?
Yeah.
Purely because the 3 teams below them were not very good. They got a low points count. This time at the moment, the 3 teams that have come up, Burnley aside, Leeds and Sunderland are up there. You've got to take one game at a time. And it just looked disjointed. When I saw Dominguez in there, I thought, why? Because he's not pulled any roots up or anything when he's played. And it just didn't seem the right starting 11 for me. And I got texts from quite a few people. It kept pinging saying, "What's the lineup?" It wasn't just me. I don't know about anybody else, but my phone kept pinging saying, "What's going on? What is happening? Why is he not playing his best players?" And we got, if we would have scored the chances and that ridiculous decision by the referee, we wouldn't be talking like this. But every team in the Premier League could say exactly the same. We should have done this, we should have done that. Newcastle, I thought they'd won 1-0. I had to go somewhere. And then I saw Arsenal had won 2-1. It's little things like that in games that can define your season. And it was just, for me, baffling that the starting 11 wasn't as possibly strong as it could have been.
I do agree about Temps playing Dominguez and McAtee even in their first starts of the season. I do think that was an error. Do you comment on that? Obviously, you think we need
Matt as well? Backward, came in as well, and despite who you're playing, the Premier League's tough, and he putting that many changes in that area, it can unsettle, and I think it did.
I think for me it was the midfield, certainly. I mean, do you think, Temps, weigh in on that? But also, do we need to circle the wagons for now around the Premier League and look after that? And then Europe is Europe in a sense. What do you think about the way that we're picking teams?
With hindsight, I think we picked the wrong three in central midfield. As Garry said, Elliot Anderson is our best player at this moment in time. And we want him to play as many minutes as we can, have as many touches as he can. But to put him in an experimental blend with Nico Dominguez and James McAtee didn't work, didn't have the platform centre mid, and that could have been addressed for a different selection. Garry, I respect the fact that I see these squad photos from your era and there's 14 lads on there, and through hell and high water, they played every single game. But you do have to use your squad in the modern game. There has to be an element of rotation when you're going. First. Go on, say again.
Sorry, not in September. You play each game as it comes. We've played 5 games. They're not going to be tired now. You pay your best team. Brian Clough always said, not worried about European Cups. It's the league. League is important. And if West Ham win at Everton tonight, we're in the bottom 3. Simple as. You have to be basic. And if you're not basic, you can get caught down there and you can get caught in a mire. And we're away to Newcastle next week. We've got the Thursday game. We're at Newcastle. We've got some hard games coming up. And if we, suddenly the teams above us, I mean, Crystal Palace are up there again. Bournemouth, who everybody expected to go down because of their, Brentford, everybody expected them to struggle. They're all massively above us at the moment. And that is a concern for me early in the season. And I love this football club to bits, I do. And I'm desperate for him to, to succeed. But his way of playing is totally different. And it's going to be difficult for players to accept that new way of thinking, that new way of playing. And because the Europa League is there as well, it makes it all so much more difficult. And you've got to go with that thing. Play your best players at this moment because it's September. It's September. The season's only just started.
I think I'm accepting the point centre mid that we have a better chance of winning that game with our best 3 players. I suppose the challenge I bring, Garry, is I think we've got 4 wingers who are yet to work out who are our starting 2, who are the backup 2. I think Hutchinson was excellent when he came on. I think Callum Hudson-Odoi marched on his fullback time and time again. And Doy and Backward probably struggled to have the impact they have made. But I was backing Backward 2 weeks ago, and I think Ange's trying to figure out there 4 players who have relatively similar profiles and can all contribute to this season. So I don't think he's in the position yet where he knows which 2 of those 4 are going to be in his best team and who's going to come in when a degree of rotation is required. Across the back 4, it's needs must. He likes Zinchenko. He likes the manner in which he goes forward, plays the Alexander Arnold role and gets into midfield. However, I've seen him struggle and I've seen him tire in the last 2 games and look a little bit out of sorts at times, having gone beyond the brief of a fullback and become this 5th midfielder / third striker at times. There's still things we need to work out. And that's what Ange's trying to do. He's trying to have a look and experiment in the midst of our first European campaign in God knows how many years and a really, really brutal Premier League season. So I do think there needs to be an element of rotation, but not to strengthen or weaken, to establish who's going to help us in the right games. Because if we pick the same 11, even 3 games in a row, it's going to explode pretty quickly. We're already without 2 of our first choice back 4. Really, really delicate. I accept, and I think that's superhuman endurance from the players in your era who played so many games so consistently and won so many things for our football club. But no Premier League manager is going to roll with the same 11. But I accept. I did see the fall off between our best midfield 3 and the midfield 3 that played at the weekend. I think it's slightly more nuanced and close with the wingers. And I think Igor Jesus and Chris Wood could both score as many goals in very different ways over the course of a Premier League season. But it's not quite as simple as playing your best team every week.
Let me just come in there as well. I think, I thought that was a must-win game after the games previous against Sunderland. I thought going into the European game, it was a must-win game because it takes the pressure off. We knew if we lost or didn't get a good result, we're going to be dragged into that maybe into the bottom 3. So that's the reason, I thought he should have played, the best players. He'd got fit and well, and, leaving Morgan Gibbs-White out, Callum Hudson-Odoi out, I don't know. And it's the game before the European game. Then you've got 4 days you're at home. You're not travelling in the game on Thursday. So you've got, after that game on Saturday, you've got four days, to ease off a little bit with the players and, do what you have to do on the training pitch. If it had been a away game, it's a different thing because travelling can tire you. When you go on holiday, you're on a plane for 3 hours, you get off and you're shattered, just a normal person. So in that respect, it was a game that I thought we had to win after going to Burnley and we're throwing, leads away. We're not, winning games. He was under pressure. Ange, because he'd not won a game, he's the first manager since 1880, whatever Matt said. So it just had red light warnings all over it if we didn't play our best side and win that game, because it puts added pressure on if you lose. And if we go into the bottom 3 tonight, that can affect players mentally, because after what the season we had last season, everybody's on a high, everybody's euphoric, and all of a sudden this season, early on, you're in the bottom 3, and that can drag you down. I mean, look at going back to Tottenham and Man United last season. They couldn't get out the malaise they were in. They stayed down there. It was just the fact that they both got to the Europa League final and Tottenham won it that, the pressure was off a little bit. So, just play your best players to start with.
We would like to mop up the rest of the game before we go on to the bigger picture stuff. Just for that, a word for the Trent navigation. The next game is, as mentioned, Midtjylland on Thursday. You can watch the game at the Nav, Thursday, October the 2nd. You don't need to book or anything like that. Just head on down. It was a great atmosphere on Wednesday night. In fact, Pete can speak to that a little bit if he wants to help me earn my money. Then I'll throw the next question at Pete. It was a brilliant atmosphere against Betis. Pete, feel free to weigh in on Seville. And then the second question would be, finishing off on the game. We'll talk about the goal, obviously, but the build up to it, the Dominguez incident, what was your take on that?
Yeah, well, on the Nav, first of all, a slightly happier conversation. It was absolutely electric last week, and I'd heartily recommend anyone who's not able to go to the game or for whatever reason goes, to be honest, because it was pretty hard for a lot of us watching all the great times that you guys were having out in Seville and seeing the constant photos and videos and all that sort of stuff. But next best thing was being absolutely surrounded by Forest fans at the Nav, and it was packed to the very doors. And what a first half! Some real moments then, and great atmosphere. So yeah, I'd thoroughly recommend it. And I don't really know what to say about the foul. And the yellow card. It was, in the initial moments, I couldn't hear the commentary because I was looking after my son while watching the game, and he wasn't being as silent as I would have liked during the Forest match, which I guess you can't blame him for. So I couldn't tell whether they'd given it for some alleged act from Dominguez, or whether it was a dive or whatever. It sounds like the dive was what they're given for in the end, but it's just nothing, isn't it? I don't know. Gary may just totally put me wrong here, but the whole thing just seemed like absolutely nothing and should have just been carried on with. I don't understand what happened. What I will say though is, and I'm a big proponent for, I guess in the sort of Cloughie tradition of having a bit of respect for referees and not banging on about it too much, because I do understand that fundamentally mistakes get made. I think generally they're honest mistakes, and if I was out there, I'd get loads of stuff wrong. So I do understand that. I think the responsibility in the end has to come down to you given what situation you've got and you've got to deal with it. And we just didn't do that at all, did we? I'm sure I think you said you've got some stills, but it's pretty obvious, isn't it? When you put a picture up of that, it's not hard to see what's going to go wrong. So I think you have to take responsibility in the end, because you can't design the circumstances you're going to be in with refereeing decisions or what the opposition do or whatever. And we should have just been able to defend that much more simply. It's not a set piece where we've been outwitted by some genius work from the training ground. It's just really basic stuff in my head. So yeah, mad decision. Don't understand it at all, but it's a real shame that we couldn't just deal with it in the moment.
Yeah, I've got a couple of stills. I'll put them up. I'm going to ask Gary about our defensive setup. Right, for people who are listening, not watching, Xhaka's about to take the free kick. Gary, have got 3 versus 2 at the back post. Nico gets blocked off, and if the ball goes in behind Milenkovic, which it does, we're in massive trouble. Is that the wrong? It looks like the wrong setup to me. What do you think about the way we're defending that set piece there?
You can't have one extra man against you at that far post. You've got to have man for man there, and it wasn't. Nico, swears blind that he was held. It looked like he was blocked off a little bit. The referee's position is not a good one from there. And the free kick should never have been given in the first place. I mean, this weekend again, VAR's cropped up. The penalty Arsenal should have had yesterday. The keeper's clearly stuck his knee out to stop him, and they've overturned it. It's just absolutely staggering that they're getting things wrong this early again in the season. Yeah, it's disappointing, because the season before we were the worst defenders of set pieces. And then last season, we were one of the best. We got Milenkovic in, that partnership with Murillo. We looked solid, and we don't want to go back to the previous season where, we were conceding for fun from free kicks, corners. But again, we wouldn't be talking like this if we'd have put the chances away. One thing that, did annoy me a little bit, that our corners were pretty poor every time. They were very high. Keeper came out and claimed them 3 or 4 times. It went beyond everybody at the far post, and some of the quality from the crosses weren't particularly good. We're just throwing into the box, and it was just the all-round performance at times was a little bit disappointing. Yes, we could have won it, but we didn't, and we have to address that. And it's not like last season. We wouldn't have conceded that last season, I don't think.
No. Oh, hopefully not. I mean, Douglas Luiz and Murillo are massive misses, aren't they, Temps? Morato, I've actually been impressed with as a centre-back, but it's a big drop-off. But we've spent a lot of money to have a squad, but you take the best players out and it shows, as Gary said, I guess.
Yeah, of course, there's a big gap between our first 11 and the rest. I think particularly that back four that were just the spine of the team last year, and the reason why we were able to get so many points from challenging positions. I think Morato's been absolutely fine at centre-half. I think he was exposed when he was put at left-back against Arsenal, and that was unnecessary. He needs to be judged as a backup centre-half, which is what he is for us. But he's a backup centre-half this year that's going to get 10 to 15 starts. It's important that he hits his straps when he plays, and he's been fine. That setup is off. I prefer man-to-man marking, particularly at the back stick, when they've got a blocker who's paying close attention to Nico Williams. They executed their free kick perfectly, and it was well taken at the back stick. Pete's exactly right. Neither player deserves or wants a free kick. The ref can choose or not to stop the game to deal with the injury. Didn't have to. The correct decision there would have been play on, and there'd have been no complaints from either side.
Gary, what do you make of how we're using Chris Wood? Obviously, he missed that header, which please speak to that about why he missed it, because you'll have been in those positions, and I guess players can miss chances. The thing that I'm more interested in is he feels like he's doing a lot of shuttle runs, pressing on his own with no one behind him in these games. Are we misusing him, or does Wood have to do better, or does Eagle Jesus have to start because he is scoring goals?
But Graham Souness, I keep repeating this, said don't let your child be a striker anymore, because they don't get any touch. whether it's Haaland or whatever, you feel sorry for strikers now, and you're reliant on service from. And it wasn't just that one header; he had 2 or 3 half chances as well with his head in the first half that he normally would have put away. I mean, the goals he scored against Brentford were terrific, and you give him the right service, he will score your goals. It was baffling how he missed that one. I think he just tried to place it in that corner where you just hit the target. If the goalkeeper makes a save, fine. Just hit the target. Don't miss the goal completely, and that's what he did. And you felt sorry for him because touch wise, I think somebody said Haaland had one game he had 11 touches, and something like that, something daft like that.
Probably scored 11 goals.
Pardon?
Probably scored 11 goals from them as well. The way today.
You know what I mean? That's the modern game at the moment. Strikers get isolated, and it can knock your duck off a little bit because the year I played in, it was frenetic. I was all over the place. I came to the ball. I went long. I had more touches probably than a lot of people in the game. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be involved as much as I possibly could, but that's not the way now. And it depends on the mentality of the striker. Whether he accepts that. I agree with you. His pressing for me is always good. He's so honest in that respect. But when Morgan Gibbs-White's there, he's right behind him as well. He's cajoling everybody as well. It's all right, if you've got one player doing it, but if nobody behind is doing it, it's a waste of time. You might as well just sit back and say, right, you can have the ball, and let them come out from the back and see what they can do. So it's a difficult one for a striker, in the modern game, but that's the way it is. You have to adapt.
Right. Well, I want to do more if there's time about Zinchenko and stuff like that, but maybe that's a conversation for another day. So I think the next bit will take a big chunk of time, and we're already 30 minutes in. And that is obviously the big debate amongst fans is have patience, it'll be fine, or this is doomed. Even some saying Ange has got to go, which I think is a bit nuts after 2 weeks, certainly. But in general, I can see why people are worried. On Match of the Day, Pete, you can kick it off. Micah Richards was asked about it. He said, 4 tough away games. They'll be frustrated today, but nothing to worry about. But the next section on Match of the Day was about sacking Potter, and Shearer said, all the promoted teams are good, and if you're worried, then clubs are going to take action. So I suppose the big picture is, are you worried? Should you be worried? And if you're not worried, when will you be worried?
I think both of those comments from the pundits are sort of reasonable. They're probably a little bit too far either way, maybe. I think it's absolutely true that the standard of the Premier League looks concerning. I think the promoted teams are all making a really good fist of it and all look like sides that, if they put their runs together and maximise what they've got, that they can all have a good effort at staying up. And that is very different to what we've seen in recent years. There's no doubt about that. Which partly influences how I feel about the Burnley and Sunderland games, I guess. Micah Richards' comments are probably easy to make if you haven't got any skin in the game, I guess. It doesn't feel quite as relaxed as that for me. But I also do agree with him that it's not easy. I think the wider context is the bigger thing for me. I just think it's really, really hard to ask a manager to make dramatic changes to a football team without a pre-season with loads of new players and on the hoof as you're already... it was 18 days he'd been at the club when we played Sunderland, I think. And how many of those days had he actually even been on the training ground? Because they're travelling everywhere for a couple of games a week since he's been here. So it can't be easy. It must be really hard. And I think that the key is to try and have patience with it, because ultimately, there are people in the comments saying it's not knee-jerk to get rid of the manager now. Well, it is knee-jerk, but also, I'm not saying that would be the wrong thing to do necessarily, but the fact is we don't have that choice anyway. And all we can do as supporters is try and give a bit of support and patience to the project that is here right now. I think it's really, if you think about the fact that it's been 18 days or whatever at time of the last game, it feels mad to me to be in a position where we've got the sort of levels of concern and toxicity that we have. And I think it's within our gift to turn things round. I think it's very feasible that we might give someone an absolute spanking in the coming games, but it's also absolutely true that we've got some incredibly tough fixtures coming up, and we will have to be very good, both in terms of taking our chances and being much meaner at the back and, less complacent in those moments to actually get anything. But we've seen it before. Nuno pulled that win against Newcastle out when he first came to the club. No one expected it. Things felt pretty doom and gloom then. We know how football works. These things absolutely can happen. I think what the manager really needs is time and a bit of space to try and get things right. And it's clear that confidence is fragile right now, and understandably so, because as I said at the start, it's actually been a long time since we've done well for a consistent period of time. It looks good in the end because the season was so much more than we would have expected at the start. But in the end, it was a very difficult run, and we had teams like Leicester and Brentford coming to the City Ground when we needed points, and we were getting nothing. So it's very tough. The position that we're in the league is horrible, and that's going to start looming. But I don't really know what to say beyond the fact that this manager has had no time with the players whatsoever and has been given a brief of entirely dismantling the way we play football and doing things in a different way. It's going to take time, and we either stick to that or we don't. But as fans, I can't really influence that. So I think I'm just going to try and be supportive. And I think the other problem is that it's pretty clear, isn't it, that a big portion of Forest fans didn't want the appointment to happen, to varying levels of sort of vociferousness. And I think, there's a sort of feeling that maybe just being right about it being wrong now is the way to go, rather than hoping it goes better. I think we've got to throw ourselves behind it, because what else have we got? This season is such a big opportunity for us to have more moments at the level and moments in Europe. And I'm getting concerned that we throw that away and that we're sort of part of the negative spiral.
I referenced at the top there attempts about Iraola at Bournemouth. I think no wins in 9. Glasner, no wins in 8 at the start of last season. This can happen. And Clough as well, I referenced as well. He won his first game and didn't win any of the next 12. So these things can happen. I suppose the concern is it's a radical departure at a time when we've got Europe and Premier League and 13 new signings. And as Pete said, and I think I saw Greg in the comments say as well, a lot of fans just, and some are probably never going to have Ange unless we're winning every game. How do you feel this plays out, or is it way too early to know about that?
I think it plays out by us neither being in the relegation conversation nor the top 6 conversation. But there are 11 other places to finish in the Premier League, which is in our range of outcomes. And that bit is up to Ange. I think that the squad that we have, the fixture congestion that we have, the amount of change that's being implemented at our club at this moment in time frames the range of outcomes for us and what we might reasonably expect. But there's a long old season to come, and we are going to get more effective at playing this manager's styling tactics as the season evolves. I think Nuno benefited and Steve Cooper benefited from having an almost immediate upturn in results, but they kept working and tweaking on their selection, their formation, and trying to find ways to impart what they wanted to get across. So it is there's no doubt it's a tough challenge for Ange. And for me, we're not going to hit the heights of last season in our eventual league position. But I would debate all day with those that felt this was a relegation squad, a relegation team, a relegation manager. I don't see us being in that point. I think mid-table obscurity in a league sense is well within the range of outcomes. But we're fighting on multiple fronts. We are integrating a lot of new players, and expectation is high at the City Ground. And rightly so. We've been spoilt by the manner in which we've grown and exceeded expectations over the past few seasons, and that has bred a different view from some quarters of the stands. But yeah, look, I think that we're far from a relegation conversation team, and unfortunately, at this moment in time, we're far from a top 6 team. But I do believe that Ange's influence will see us climb the table if we can work on this defensive solidity while scoring these goals, because there are elements of the formation, the strategy at the moment, which isn't firing in games. He's very, I don't think he'd mind anyone saying stubborn, bloody-minded, right? He sticks to what he's going to do. He's not going to listen to impact from Alan Shearer, Mika Richards, or little old us on on here describing how things need to be a bit more defensively solid. We know what we've got in Ange. We've got a possession-based manager that wants to risk the house at times on scoring more goals than the opposition, and that is going to lead to a wide range of results. But at this moment in time, I still genuinely believe that we'll finish mid-table in the Premier League without any fear of relegation.
You have to look at it in reality. You mentioned we've got a heavy workload. So have Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace beat Liverpool at the weekend. Crystal Palace are in the top 3, are they? Crystal Palace won the FA Cup. They've got the same workload as us. They lost one of their best players to Arsenal last season, and they've their start to the season. It was a great point for us at Crystal Palace. We beat Brentford 3-1. Brentford have picked up, and they're doing well. That's the reality of the situation. They've all got heavy workloads. Crystal Palace are the same as us.
Isn't the difference between us and Crystal Palace, though, that they've got a total stability at the football club and have had the same manager for a long period of time and pre-season and all that sort of stuff?
Pete, you're saying we haven't got stability at the football club?
No, because we've signed 13 new players in the summer and we've got a new manager who's totally different to the last one with no pre-season.
So what would we rather do? Just try and change it carte blanche and stay, get in the bottom 3 early in the season and then struggle to get out. You can do it, sort of gradually, just play the way we played under Nuno. And
I just think you hire a different manager for that, don't you?
Get a good start to the season. And that good start to the season should have happened because, you looked at the game. We said before a ball was kicked, probably in the first programme, it's a great looking start to the season, fixture-wise, as we did last season, and we got more points last season. You're playing 2 of the promoted teams. You're playing Brentford at home, who everybody thought was going to struggle. And, it's where we are now. It's reality. People will say, yeah, you're being negative. I'm not. I'm just being realistic. You have to look at it in black and white. If you don't, you try and throw colour in there, you're going to get everybody confused. You have to, in the Premier League, because it's so harsh and it's so difficult a league, to do the right things at the right time. And going back to the Sunderland game, I don't think we did the right things at the right time. As I say, I reiterate again, repeat myself, play your best team. Beat Sunderland, takes the pressure off for the European game on Thursday, and the conversation is a whole lot different. I think sometimes we go against reality. The football, professional sport is, very, very difficult. It's hard. You looked at the golf, the Ryder Cup. Everybody thought we were going to, coast it yesterday. It was so close in the end, And, you look at tennis, the best players in the world. The best players at any sport, are consistent. You do things on a regular basis. And you prioritise your next race or your next game of golf. And I just don't think we prioritise the Sunderland game as high as we should have done.
Let me put talking of black and white, Gary. Let me put this on the screen then. These are our upcoming games before the November international break. So we've got Midtjylland, Newcastle, then a break. Chelsea at home, Porto at home, Bournemouth away, United at home, Graz away, Leeds at home. Well, to me, you've got to give Ange at least those 8 games before you know more and know enough to make a judgment. Where are you at on that, Gary?
Matt, I said, you've got to give every money, you've got to give Nuno. People were saying sack Nuno a couple of seasons ago, weren't they? And I said, you've got to give him a pre-season. You've got to give him the benefit of bringing his players in. And look what happened when you gave him that chance, to prove that he could do things. He took us into, a place where we've not been for years that none of us dreamed of. So I'm 100% about backing a new manager coming in. But it was the one big thing that was made of Ange coming in was the total opposite of playing to Nuno. And it was always going to be difficult if you tried to do that straight away. And that's the only concern I've got. I think you've got to do it gradually and get the players into that way of thinking. It's early in the season, which is good, because it gives you time, it gives him time. But all of a sudden, if the results do go against us, then you get dragged into, that bottom part, the Premier League early on. And it's sometimes difficult mentally, collectively, to get out of that malaise and get yourself up the table. We've seen in the past. We saw last season Tottenham and Man United, struggled, to get out that bottom half of the table, and that's the Premier League for you. So that's why I look at it in black and white, because Tottenham and Man United are expected to do so much better than Nottingham Forest, because they are Tottenham and Manchester United, who are expected to be in the top 6 every season, and they were down in relegation problems. And they struggled to get out of it with the squads they got. I felt sorry for Tottenham and Ange, because he lost all his back four very early, and it's always difficult, to overcome massive injuries like that. But Manchester United, even now, look at the struggle they're having. Brentford battered them 3-1. They're having a real bad start, and they're talking about Amorim already. I've seen Wayne Rooney's comments. Is he the man for the job? And I saw comments from Des Walker, and I think one of the podcasts, he said, Ange might not have the time, because of, the way the owner, he does things and goes about things, and they were words from Des, not from me. So, yeah, that's why I'm saying about black and white and how difficult it can become if you let things go early on. And that's my worry. If we lose at Newcastle, I'm just hoping tonight that Everton, David Moyes, can do as a job and beat West Ham. But if they do, if West Ham do win, we're in the bottom 3, and that is a massive negative early in the season, no matter who the manager is, after what we went through last season.
I suppose my worry, Temps, is you sack Ange at some point, and I think, like I say, if you've got to give him at least till November. Then where do you go? Do you go to Sean Dyche and you knee-jerk back again? I don't know. I feel like you've got to let this play out longer than people are saying, haven't you? Because otherwise this could be an absolute car crash season.
Mate, I'm not even answering a question about sacking Ange at this point in time. I think it's absolutely absurd. I think we've all seen what comes from stability, and the periods of success that we've had have been when managers have started and ended a season. That's not to be this year. I hope it is next year. And of course, if we get to Christmas in the bottom 3, then it's a different conversation. We do demand success now from what is a very well-resourced football club with a squad of exceptionally talented players. It's taken massive strides, and things can change in football. I think I've shown over the years on here that I'm more than prepared to change my opinion. But I think to be talking about sacking such a recently appointed manager at this point in team is absolutely absurd. And I would plead to fans to get behind him while there's every chance of turning this around. I'd be really, really annoyed with the football club and what we stand for if we were to sack a manager in the next few weeks. It would be absolutely absurd.
I agree with that. But one of the greatest managers of all time got sacked after 44 days.
Yeah,
he got sacked at Forest because he only won 1 out of his first 13 games as well.
Yeah. So, those things happen. We've seen them happen. I'm all for giving any new manager the chance he needs to prepare his players for the way he wants to play. Then, is it down to the players that they're not responding to the way Ange wants to play? There's another argument. You can blame a manager all the time. I think players not Forest players, I'm saying players in general, get away with murder because it's always the manager that's blamed. But sometimes it goes a little bit deeper, and you see players thinking, well, is he giving his all? This is, again, not Forest players, but in general. So, the manager's always going to be the brunt of all the criticism because he picks a team. But that team that goes out there has to perform, no matter if they like the manager or they don't like him or they don't like the way he plays. You were a professional footballer, paid a lot of money to go out and perform for your football club. No matter who's in charge on the training pitch, you have to go and perform. Doesn't matter who the manager, if you hate him or you dislike him, you don't like the way he plays. Crikey, I remember Brian Clough, Larry Lloyd, clashing all the time. But Larry was, one of the first on the team sheets every week because the gaffer knew he'd go out there and give everything he got, and that's maybe a different era, but that's the way it should be. Managers get the short end of the stick all the time, and you've got to give him chance. And like Matt said, November time coming up to Christmas, I'll ask the question of the three of you: if we're still in that situation, then what happens? I know, but those are the questions people are thinking about now. We're discussing it now, and it's not been the start to the season we wanted. Those first two games were so encouraging. Beating Brentford, that should have been 5 or 6. We know it should. At Crystal Palace, we should have nicked it in the end. We had 2 great chances. And since then, it's just gone poof, flat as a pancake. There's a lot of things happened in the club, in the back room. There's been a lot of fallout. Nobody wanted to see that. It's a new era, and you want that new era to work. I want it to work desperately. And, I really hope it does. And you've got to give him time. But then, what comes after?
Pete, last word on this to you then before we move on and wrap things up. It is mad how we seem to have gone from the most efficient team in the league in front of goal to the least efficient. We've missed an absolute shit ton of chances in the last 3 games. Our shot volume's been crazy. Should we be looking more at the players for not doing their job as well? Just final thoughts on this, because we'll wrap it up and move along.
I like that your language echoes the position that we're occupying in the table. You've been getting increasingly more sweary of late, which is fun.
I think you're at 1 or 2 an episode.
Look, the hill I will die on right now is that there's loads and loads of noise. There's loads of things that we can all talk about what's going wrong or right. But the biggest single factor, if you look at every single game and look at the shot maps and look at the XG and all that sort of stuff, and I know people don't like some parts of that, but ultimately it is literally just a catalogue of what chances you've had and how good they were. You look at that for every game, and we should have won the games. Even with the bad moments at the other end, we should have won them. And we haven't taken the chances, and that's the biggest difference from the success of last season. There may be some element of what the sort of stats guys would call regression to the mean in there, but ultimately we haven't taken the moments when they've come. We've actually created loads of them, and there could have been a very different narrative about us needing to tighten up at the back, yes, but also being, a prolific side already early days under Ange. It hasn't happened. I don't know. I don't feel like it's something we're really to blame anyone for it necessarily. Whether, Gary is much better to talk about whether you blame players for that or not. I just think it's really early days. We need a bit of luck, I think, to get confidence going again. It doesn't take much, does it, until people's heads start to drop a little bit and it all just feels flat. And they're not getting anything from the crowd at the moment because we're not getting anything from them. And it's all those sort of spirals and doom loops. But I do think fundamentally the evidence is clear that we have created chances and we just haven't taken them. And if we had, it would be a really different story. And you can say we haven't, so that's the results. But there's no use in just analysing the results. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about, is there?
I tell you what, we've not one game we've not mentioned is the West Ham game at home. I was watching that game and I thought on the pitch, fundamentally there was something not quite right. I don't know about you lads. It didn't look like the Nottingham Forest. West Ham couldn't score or win a game for love nor money, and they beat us 3-0. And it looked, like sort of lethargic, that performance. It didn't look right. Your key players didn't, sort of have that spark that they've had collectively with the bad performance. And you just felt something wasn't quite right. Well, I did, as an ex-player. You watch a game and you think, hold on a minute, beat Brentford, terrific game, great point at the Palace, and all of a sudden the unrest's out there in the public domain. And we get beat 3-0 by a team that's had a terrible start to the season.
Yeah, I think the thing is for me, things can change so quickly. Like in Seville, we're $1 million and everyone's happy and everything's on the right track. Saturday, use my second swear of the day, we're a bag of shit and we're going to get relegated. Let's see. We need to see what more games bring, I think.
Can I just say something about the Seville game? I didn't see it because I haven't got that. I haven't got the TNT or whatever they call it. So I didn't. And I was away anyway. I was on holiday. Somebody was saying to me that they once we were in the lead, Ange changed it and brought the better players off. And is that
Luis got injured? I think Luis's injury changed it a lot. That was a big issue. I think when I said this earlier to Temps, when Luis is fit, and again going back to what you said, Gary, when we've got our best players on the pitch and Murillo's back, I think there's a lot to be hopeful about.
We miss his, contribution defensively and offensively.
I think so. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I know it's difficult. I said this on the post-match show. It's difficult to step back and have patience because we all worry this could. I'll use a third right. This could go to shit, and it could go terribly wrong in the next few weeks. And I think it absolutely could. But it's. I don't know. It's very early in his tenure. Look at like your mate Nigel Clough, Gary. He had an absolute awful run last season. I think managers can turn things round. And all the way things are in the ground as well. Temps, you can speak to this actually. The atmosphere drops off a cliff. Like the halcyon days were when we were Sunderland 2 years ago, and it was absolutely barnstorming down the ground every game. And now that sort of, it's not malaise, isn't the right word.
I think malaise is the right word.
Well, yeah, maybe it is, Temps. I don't know. What was it like at the end of the game? Is it a concern to you that we've come to not expect too much as fans? You have to word this carefully because you piss everyone off. But the way things are going,
we've already done that.
Oh, okay. The way things are going in the ground now, it feels very different to when we came up, and that's a bit of a worry. I don't know.
Well, there were boos. We all heard them. I'd like to think the vast majority weren't part of that, but it has been a long time since we've heard Depeche Mode or Forest all over the world. So I do think that support has a piece to play in this. I think we saw that in the seasons where we have avoided relegation in particular. The manner in which we upheld that atmosphere through difficult times is what came to define the atmosphere of the City Ground. It can be an intimidating place for opposing teams to come, and there were long periods at the weekend where we were outsung by Sunderland, who scored a first half goal and had a bit of a party. So yeah, that's part of being a football fan. Someone said in the comments, you can't only support your club when they're winning. There will be ebb and flow. There will be good times and bad. But this period since we've been promoted to the Premier League has been an exceptional time. I was lucky enough to be in Seville with 3,500 others who had an exceptional time. There are so many reasons to be positive. And I think the influence of the fans isn't everything, right? But I think we can raise or decrease the ability of our players by 10, 15%. And that's a responsibility that we all have. I'm not suggesting that everyone becomes a happy clapper and every defeat is forgiven and every missed chance is forgiven, because this is elite sport. It's brutal. Contracts and managerial jobs are decided on results. But it's too early to throw Ange out, to dismiss some of these players and to think that the party's over, because it's not. We will continue to make changes and address things and change things. There'll be another transfer window in 3 months' time that we'll be active in. So be positive, keep the faith. Of course, if we are where we find ourselves now in 8-9 games' time, it's a very different conversation. We know that, Ange knows that. But in this interim period, get behind the manager, get behind the players, and let's get ourselves to City Ground and see a win sooner rather than later, which will just lift this mood, lift some of this feeling, and allow us to move forward positively.
I couldn't agree with regarding backing Ange. Any manager who comes in, you have to give him time. We go back, I'll regress to Nuno when people were saying sack him. And luckily, they didn't. And look what he did for us last season. It was a spectacular season. So, every manager deserves a chance. Unless you don't learn your lessons from certain situations. Russell Martin's getting a load of stick at Rangers at the moment. He's doing the same thing probably he did at Southampton, and you hate
deserves it.
Stick. But sometimes you have to, you change your way of thinking. Maybe say, right, I want to play this way, but I've got the players who can play this way as well. Who played that way under the previous manager. I think if you've got that ability to change your mind, say, well, things aren't quite right. Let's try something a little bit different. That's great, but give the manager a chance. Let's see how it goes. We've got a big game coming up on Thursday. We're all going to. I'm going to be there. I missed the. I couldn't go to Seville, obviously, but I'm. Really looking forward to this on Thursday, and I just think there might be a massive spike in the performance. And if we win that game, it sets you up beautifully going into the next few games before the international break.
Temps, you've got to go, haven't you? I've got one more thing to repeat, but any final words, Temps, before you have to go?
I just echo what's been said already. Don't be under no illusion. There's a search for answers going on internally now at Forest within that training ground to fix things. No one's happy with that level of performance. No one's happy with that result. So get behind them. Until we hear otherwise, Ange's our manager, and it does nobody any favours to be part of a booing culture or a hounding out of a manager or a team who's having to try things and build the plane while he flies it. So yeah, that's my view. As I said, I'm not a happy clapper or whatever we'll be accused of in some of the comments. And I think the sensible heads see that time is required. You don't get too much of it in football, but there's a fair bit to run before this becomes any kind of panic station from my perspective.
Lovely stuff. Right, we shall let Temps go. Thank you very much for that. He's gone. Good. And just one last thing, Pete, quickly, and then we will wrap things up. Just how we view the players as well. People were loving Bakwa. Now they're questioning him. Dan and Dory, good start. Now they're people questioning him. Chris Wood, probably everyone. The only one I've got consistent worry about is Zinchenko or Zinchenko's role. But do we have to view players from the same sort of lens we view the manager from, and take a step back and have patience with them? Because if we was knee jerk with players in general, then Gary probably would have been booed after 5 minutes of his Forest career and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's always the case. I do think we need to give them much more time, and you've got to understand what a lot of these players are going through. We're talking about the wingers in particular. Suddenly, there's a sort of surge of feeling against Bakwa. I mean, he's come from a totally different league. He's a young player. He's not had an awful lot of experience. He's come to the hardest league in the world, and he's been expected to hit the ground running. I think we've seen plenty enough of flashes of him or Ndoye or whoever else to know that they can be good players for us. But it's just a matter of time. It's the same with everything. The atmosphere at the moment is problematic, and my fear is that we're contributing to a sort of wider culture that isn't going to give our players and our manager the best chance to succeed that they can. I think we've done much better in the past as a group of fans. I think we've been sort of undying in loyalty to a lot of players in the last few years, and it means that they get a much easier situation to come into. And I get times change, and I understand that we're a different football club to what we were 3, 4, 5 years ago or whatever. But I just think there's a lot to be said for just trying to take a step back, support everybody in these very, very early days, and give them all a chance to succeed. I mean, Bakwa wasn't even in the building until I think after the West Ham game. We hadn't even signed him, and then what is this? This is his first time at the City Ground. I just think it's mad to be expecting huge things and indeed to be turning on people this early. And we've seen so much of this knee-jerk stuff already this season, haven't we? I mean, these comments were full of people demanding Morgan Gibbs-White wasn't in the team for the last few weeks, and then as soon as he isn't in the team, they're all critical that Ange just picked a weaker team. I don't think they can win at the moment, and I think we all just need to take a step back, try and reduce the sort of pressure in the pressure cooker, and just give it all a little bit of time and space. We've seen so many times in recent years. I mean, Anthony Younger's a great example, isn't he? If the majority of fans commenting on this sort of stuff had their way, Anthony Elanga would have been sold before he had any of his purple patches for Forest. And look what he turned out to be for us, a brilliant player while he was here, and someone who led to us being able to make the sort of investment that we've been able to with his eventual sale. I just think you need to give it all time and just try and be a bit more patient and understanding.
Just before I ask Gary final words, it's been a show that's really gone long, so there's loads more we could have talked about, and we'll probably do that through the week, but we haven't had a word for Global Telemetrics, so we'll throw Gary's final words in 15 seconds.
The Reds are back in Europe. Big Ange is taking his men on a trip, and if you're joining, be careful. We're having a lot of thefts happening from airport car parking, so make sure when you get back your car's still there with one of our tracking devices.
I was relieved to find my car was still there, because that was in my mind when I walked back to get it at Gatwick. So yeah, thanks to Global Telemetrics, thanks to Mike Boyens there making his debut presenting. Check out the link in the description if you haven't already. That'd be good.
A really uneducated opinion, Matt, as ever, but it feels a bit scandalous that you can get your car parked from airport car parking, doesn't it? Surely something must be secure.
I know, you'd think so, but
Come
there
on,
you go.
Matt.
Yeah, come on, lads, bloody hell. Right, Gary, any final words, anything you want to add before we go?
Yeah, you just got to keep the faith. That's all you can do as a Forest supporter. We all want, this football club to progress. That's why the owner bought the football club, and it's progressing in the right direction. And going back to some of the players you've signed who have come and never played in the Premier League, believe me, it is the hardest the league in the world to adapt to. Even the greats who played in the Premier League, Bergkamps and people like that, strikers at the football club. I can go through names, I can't remember some of them, but they've struggled. They didn't do it in the first season. They didn't take the Premier League by storm. And we're talking about some of the best players the game has ever seen. It's difficult, but I think the problem is playing, 2 or 3 of them maybe in the same side at the same, in a game when they've not, seen what the Premier League's about or felt how difficult it is. That can be a problem, and that was my one beef. The Sunderland game, I thought it should have been the strongest team to go out and win that game because of the start we'd had and where we were. It's all right in hindsight saying that, but I thought that as soon as I saw the team sheet, I thought, Sunderland could be tricky because they've had a really good start to the season. They've signed some good players, but they've all gone now. You can't do anything about the games we've played. It's about going forward. And if we get a result on Thursday, then it's a massive lift for everybody. And, if Ange's the way he plays comes off, which it could do without a doubt. We saw it in Seville in the first half. Then there is, so much to look forward to the rest of the season. Let's be positive, and going forward, it can happen. And, let's hope it does.
Let's hope it does indeed. Wayne Bodkin, thank you very much for signing up for membership. Appreciate that very much. And everyone else that's a member, thank you for the support. Pete, anything you want to add today?
Yeah, if you just give me a couple of minutes, sorry to be a pain. I wanted to take this moment to say a few words about the tremendously sad loss of a brilliant Forest fan and an avid consumer of this podcast. Bob Davies was a season ticket holder at the City Ground for 25 years. But Bob sadly passed away suddenly following a heart attack on Friday. And I think it goes for everyone involved with the podcast when I say that we're thinking of and sending love to his partner, Jane, his children, Mark, Jack and Stuart, and his 2 granddaughters, Willow and Helena, as well as a big, loving, extended family. On a slightly personal note, I've known Bob's son, Mark, in a slightly unusual way for more than 20 years or so, I think. We sort of became odd pen pals, even though we lived relatively close. I think Mark was in Loughborough and I was in West Bridgford. But we were both young Forest fans and both liked talking and writing about Forest online and all that sort of stuff. Since then, we've been in sort of semi-regular contact. Mark's gone on to become a brilliant teacher. I do whatever it is that I do. He and his dad were still going to Forest games together. I mean, for some years, actually, Mark and his dad and I sat quite close to each other in the Trent End Upper, I think it was then. Albeit I was always sort of too frightened as a slightly shy teenager to go and make a real friend of an online one, so we never really spoke. I regret that now. I think, you look back on those things and you regret them. I suppose it would have been nice to meet Bob. I know this loss is going to be tremendously hard to process for Mark and for the family, but I hope in time the bonds of football, Forest, family can begin to become helpful through grief and eventually into sort of the reminiscing and comfort that you can get along the line. I'm sure many of us who've been able to take that sort of support from this club, this community, and hopefully this podcast can be a bit of part of that too. So yeah, as I say, all love to the Davies family and extended family. And here's to you, Bob. Very much one of our own.
Yeah, well said, Pete. Well said. Echo all that, certainly. Right, we shall wrap things up there on a sad note, but we'll be back tomorrow with Danny Collins, former Forest defender. He was at the game on Saturday. Hear what he made of it. Hear what he makes of the whole Ange thing from a slightly neutral point of view. I think he's got 1 foot more in the Sunderland camp, to be honest. But an ex-player's point of view, like Garry, will be interesting to hear. So join us for that, and we shall preview the Midtjylland game on Wednesday, and then it's a game on Thursday, obviously. Before you go, do us a favour, hit like if you haven't already. Do consider membership or subscribing, or Patreon, or a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify would be great. Garry Birtles, thank you very much.
An absolute pleasure as always, Matt.
Yes, it was interesting debate. Appreciative of everyone's comments in the chat as well. Very good of you, Pete. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And here's to a good game on Thursday, and hopefully the tide can start to turn.
Hopefully so. Right, thanks very much for everyone's company. Do us a favour and hit like as mentioned. And if we don't see you tomorrow for Danny Collins, we shall see you soon.